So, Hebrews chapter 10, I want to go into Better Things Part 2. Last week we heard about, we all believe in God for better things, right? We all believe in God for better things, and that's not a bad thing. Sometimes people are believing for better things because they have issues of insecurity, or they compare and they compete and they just think, you know, I've got to have this or I've got to be like that to feel better about myself. So some people want better things because they are basically insecure. Other people want better things because they're basically greedy and they just want it. And enough is never enough. Sometimes the more you have, the more you want and the more you try to get. Sometimes people just want better because they think they deserve it, that they think they're actually better than other people, and that can be quite prideful. But usually when we talk about better things, especially worldly things, it's physical things. It's cars, it's houses, it's achievements, it's looks, it's about best schools, it's about best suburbs, that kind of better thing. And so they're temporarily focused, okay? Our natural physical things, the things that can pass away or just fall away overnight or fade away. The stock market crashes, things can just drop like that. So these things are not eternal things, and the Lord wants us to focus on eternal things. And the God of the Bible talks about better things. Better things are not bad things. It's not bad to want better things. And the Bible talks about better things. So we're going to look at that. Now, we looked kind of at the Old Testament, and now I want to look at the New Testament. The Old Testament had mentioned good things, okay? It mentioned good things, but the New Testament goes into the realm of better things, especially the book of Hebrews, and we're going to look at that. And it was written to the Hebrews because they understood, the Jews understood the Old Testament was about the good things, but the good things were a shadow of things to come. In other words, they weren't the reality or the full picture, okay? So I want to have a look in Hebrews chapter 10, talking about the Old Testament, the law of God, okay? The Ten Commandments and the laws that were required to receive the good things of God. But this is saying here, verse 1, the law having a shadow of the good things to come. So the law was a shadow. It wasn't the whole picture. It was just a shadow, okay? And not the very image of the things, can never, with these same sacrifices, which they offer continually year by year, make those who approach perfect. Now, what is it talking about? It's talking about how to be perfect or to be complete or close to God in the Old Testament. There was a barrier called sin which blocked that access to God. And so sacrifices were required by God to have access to Him, okay? But it says here that was just a shadow of things to come. The sacrifices, the animal sacrifices, the blood of the animals and the burnt offerings, there's many different offerings that were offered, offerings and sacrifices, so that people could have access to God and forgiveness, okay? But it says, the priest would offer this continually, year by year, and then the words are, can never make those who approach perfect. So all the sacrifices and the offerings that the priest made could never make the people perfect, meaning complete before God, okay? So it's saying in the Old Testament, the sacrifices, the animal sacrifices that were required, okay, were only a shadow. They were not the full picture of what God had, okay? Now, if you see someone and you see their shadow, you know it's them, but it's not the real them. The real them may be somewhere else nearby, okay? Okay, so it's talking about the Old Testament, the law was a shadow, but it wasn't the reality of what God had. Okay? So it says year by year. If you know anything about the Jewish religion, the Judaism, there was a special day of the year as well called the Day of Atonement. And every year on the Day of Atonement, the high priest would go into the most holy place, the Holy of Holies, and they would go in with the blood sacrifice and they would put it on the mercy seat, okay? There was this gold mercy seat with 2 cherubim on it, and there was things within the mercy seat, okay? And they would sprinkle the blood there. They would have their priestly robes on. They would go on behalf of the whole nation of Israel, okay, on the sins of all the nation. They would have a rope around their leg, because if they went in there and there was sin in their life, they would die in the presence. That was representing the presence of God. And then the others would have to pull the rope to get them out of that place. So it was a holy, holy thing, okay? But it said the blood of the animals could never make anyone who approached perfect. So they would go in year by year, but there was also daily sacrifices for sin. So this was an ongoing thing. It said every priest stands ministering daily. So there was once a year the Day of Atonement for all of Israel, but then individuals would come with their dove or their lamb or their goat or whatever, their calf, and they would bring it. Every priest would stand ministering daily and offering repeatedly the same sacrifices. Then it says, which, there's those words, can never take away sins. Okay? So this was what God instituted for them. And you think, well, why would God do that? Because he was showing the power of sin, what it was like, and how sin affects people on a daily basis. Okay? And so the priest every day would be offering sacrifices for people's sins. But those sacrifices could never take away the sin. It would say that they would cover it, but it would not remove. It could cover their sin, but it would never cleanse their sin and never really remove or put away the sin. Okay? So we see that can never. And so the Old Testament sacrifices were kind of like a Band-Aid. Yeah, like a Band-Aid. You put a Band-Aid on something that's really infected, it's not going to help it. Okay? It's just going to cover it. But if you want to get rid of the infection, then you need to put in the disinfectant and you need to put on the antibiotics and you need to deal with the root cause of it. Okay? And so this is what the Lord was showing. These sacrifices, you could bring it. You could lay your hands on the animal's head and basically transfer your sin to an innocent animal. That animal would die on behalf of your sins. This was all a shadow or a picture of what God was showing that Jesus would do for the sins of the whole world. But it said these could never take away sins. And then it talks about Jesus, but this man, talking about Jesus, but this man, after he had offered one sacrifice for sins forever, sat down at the right hand of God, from that time waiting till his enemies are made his footstool. For by one offering he has perfected forever those who are being sanctified. What does that mean? It means every day and every year these priests continually offering sacrifices, and it could never fix the problem. Never fix the problem. But then this man who never sinned, this man whose blood was pure, that was the ultimate sacrifice that God required, that would just put away sin, would remove sin. Without the shedding of blood, there's no remission or removal of sins. And it was only his pure, sinless blood that could be the one sacrifice for everyone's sins forever. And then it says that he sat down at the right hand of God. When do you sit down? You sit down when the job is done. Right? Sometimes people will say, hey, what are you sitting down for? The job's not finished. Come on, get up, do this, do that. Okay? But when the job is done, you can sit down because it is finished. That's what he said. It is finished. And he sat down. So that one offering, verse 14, it says by one offering, that's when he offered his body. when he shed his blood, when he died on the cross for us, when he rose from the dead, it says by one offering, himself, he has perfected, that means completed. He's completed forever. He's made us complete in him. We're not perfect, but we are complete in him. When we stand before God, we are perfect. He doesn't see us in our weaknesses. He sees us having received forgiveness through the blood of Jesus. We have received Jesus. That's what makes us complete in him. That's what makes us perfected. Okay? It says he has perfected forever. Okay? We're not going to become perfect. We are perfected forever, but we are being sanctified. That means being set apart, being set apart, being set apart. As we spend time with God, as we spend time in his word, we are more and more set apart for him. Okay? So he sat down because the job is done. He made that sacrifice himself. So now, what is the sacrifice that we make? In Hebrews 13, it says, the sacrifice of our lips giving praise. You know, I'd much rather sing praises to God than have to bring an animal every time I sin. How awesome is that one sacrifice that he made for us? Absolutely awesome. That is the better thing. That is the best thing ever. Amen? And in Hebrews chapter 1 verse 3 it says, when he had himself purged our sins, so when he did that, he sat down at the right hand of the majesty on high. This is saying it again. Twice it said, he sat down. He did the job, he sat down. He rested and he's waiting for whatever comes next, which is, woohoo! Verse 4. So he sat down, it says he has, having become so much better than the angels. Well, wasn't he always better than the angels? Yes, he was. Yes, he was. He's eternally been better than the angels. He's the only begotten Son of God. Okay? Having become so much better than the angels, as he has by inheritance obtained a more excellent name than they. So why has he got the better name than the angels? Everyone thinks angels are pretty cool and pretty up there. Yeah? But it says Jesus became so much better than them. Why? Because he was the one who chose to humble himself, who chose to become obedient to the point of death, who chose to die, take on the sins of the world and die for us. The angels, they never did that. They never did that. They never wanted to do that. They never could do that. Only he could. That's why he's so much better than the angels. It's interesting. Some people will worship angels, pray to angels or whatever, but they won't worship Jesus. Interesting. Then in Hebrews chapter 7, so it says he sat at the right hand of the Father. He's higher. He's done something the angels never did. What else happened? What was the better things about what Jesus did? Hebrews 7:9 says, for the law made nothing perfect or complete. We've discovered that. Okay. On the other hand, there is the bringing in of a better hope through which we draw near to God. So the better thing is that now we, every individual, has the privilege and the honour and the opportunity to draw near to God. In the Old Testament, it was only the priests who could come to a certain point, and then once a year it was only one, the high priest, who could come into the Holy of Holies. Now, because of Jesus, we have a better hope. We can all come near to God. Verse 22, it says, by so much more, Jesus, spelled wrong there, Jesus has become a surety of a better covenant. So the old covenant is now become a new covenant. Okay? There is a new covenant, a better covenant. This is a covenant of grace. This is a covenant not of works, but of grace. It's based on believing and receiving, not earning and deserving. Okay? It's a covenant of grace, not works. It's a better covenant. And it says Jesus has become a surety of that better covenant. What is a surety? A surety. A surety is someone who takes responsibility for someone else. It's someone who is basically a sponsor. Someone says, I will sponsor you. They're saying, I will take responsibility for you. I will be surety for you. Some people put up their house as surety. They will put up things. They'll say, I will take responsibility for this person. So Jesus is the one who's responsible, the responsible party in that better covenant. He's the one who is responsible. And then in Hebrews 8 it says this, now he has obtained a more excellent ministry, inasmuch as he's also mediator of a better covenant. So not only is he the surety, the responsible one in the covenant, but he's also the mediator, which is based on better promises. What is a mediator? What is a mediator? A mediator is a person who stands in between two parties to bring them together. So he is the one, he's the key figure of this better covenant to bring us and God closer together. He's the mediator of the better covenant. Awesome. One who stands in the middle to bring parties together. You know, they have mediators. Even today, they have mediators, like in divorce cases. Yeah. They try and solve people's relationship issues with mediators, someone who will try and bring the two parties together. When there's custody battles for children, they will have a mediator, because these are highly emotional things, emotionally charged situations, where there's a distance between the parties, okay? Then a mediator is someone. Sometimes they have mediators on a far greater scale, like when nations are at war. They will get a neutral party, or they will meet on neutral ground with a mediator, someone who's not biased in any way, but someone who will bring the two parties together. So, you know, this is what Jesus has done for us. So much better, so much better. So because of all these better things that he has done, you know, the life that we now live, you know, this living by faith should be easier for us. Living in the New Testament, in the New Covenant, should be so much more easy for us. But even living by faith can be difficult. Can be difficult. Unless we have this picture of something better that lies ahead. If we look at this world and this life as the best there is, then we are going to be sadly disappointed. We have got to look beyond. And in Hebrews 11, which is basically the chapter of faith, the heroes of faith, it says that they desired, or they seeking, a better, a heavenly country. So even those in the Old Testament who did not receive all the promises, it says they still looked beyond. They still had hope. They looked for a heavenly country. They looked towards heaven. They had an eternal perspective. It says, therefore, God is not ashamed to be called their God, for he has prepared a city for them. So when you have faith, regardless of what's going on in this world or in your life individually, whatever is going on, unfairness, injustice or whatever, you've got to be one who desires the better, the heavenly, that which is beyond, because God has prepared better things for us. This is not the be-all and the end-all, okay? This is just that place called time. And in this place called time, we make decisions that will affect our eternity, where we spend eternity and who we spend eternity with. Okay? This is not what life is all about. This is the decision-making place for eternity. Okay? So living by faith is easy when remember this world is not our home. We need to remember that on this side of eternity, not everything will be perfect, not everything will be just, not everything will be settled, even the way that we want it to be settled. So, what's the attitude that we should have because of all these better things that God has done for us and the better things that lie ahead? We should have this kind of attitude. Let nothing be done through selfish ambition or conceit, but in lowliness, so be humble. In lowliness of mind, let each esteem others better than himself. Wow. That means treat people the way you want to be treated, okay? Not to be selfish. Let each one of you look out not only for your own interests, but also for the interests of others. In other words, love God and love one another. It's that in a nutshell. Because of the good things that God has done, the better things that he's promised to us, then we need to be better people. We need to be better people. Not trying to be perfect, because we are already perfect in him. We are already complete in him. And if we focus on just loving God, hearing God, obeying the Lord, then things would go better for us in this world. We follow the Lord. So what have we found here? We've found the better way of salvation through his sacrifice, the better hope that we have because we can draw near to God, the better covenant, the better agreement, the better alliance, the better contract, better promises, better place that waits for us. Okay? And in the meantime, we be better examples, represent the Lord well. We are his disciples. It said that they will know that we are his disciples by the love that we have for one another. The love that we have. Okay, we focus so much on other things, but we don't focus on loving God and loving others. So Lord, I just thank you. I thank you, Lord, for all those awesome things that you have done for us, the better things. Lord, we do desire better things. We are satisfied with what you've done and what we have. But Lord, it's a good thing to aspire. It's a good thing to have dreams. It's a good thing to have visions. Lord, we don't want to live in the shadows. We want the reality of the better things that you have for us. The things that you purchased with your blood. That we would live the life that you've called us to live. That we'd be the examples that you want us to be. That we would represent you well. Father, we just thank you that you did the hard work and you did the impossible. And now you just call us to draw near, to hear clearly, to follow you. Not to compare ourselves to others, not to compete with others for the better things, but to get them from you, to acknowledge what you've done, and to believe you for great things. We just bless you tonight. We bless you tonight. In Jesus' name. In Jesus' name. Amen. 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 Let's just stand. Let's just stand. I want to pray for anyone tonight that you may have had a challenging week. Things may not have gone the way that you hoped they would go or thought they would go, and things have been unsettling for you. I just want to pray for you. It may have been physical, it may have been emotional. I just want to pray for you, for the God of the breakthrough to just intervene in your lives. The God of the breakthrough. The God of the breakthrough. He is Emmanuel. He is God with us. God with us. Father, I just pray for Vicky. Lord, I pray for Eddie.